Okay, why don't we start working on a single recipe page? And first, I think we should solve the fact of how we can get the ID that we're passing. And there's going to be no better option as to look for where and how this is happening than to go the official documentation for the React router. And then I tell you that as you're passing the ID, so let's say here within the path, if we would like to access it, we're going to go to the component, and then within the props, there's going to be match object. Within the match, there's going to be params as well as the ID. In our case, we're not going to be making a functional component. We're going to make a class-based component. However, we can still access the same props. And the way we're going to do that, we're going to go to a single recipe. That's going to be the page that we're going to be working on. We will going to close the sidebar. We don't need it right now, but I will going to need a few imports first. So first, I'm going to say recipe data, and I'm going to say the reason why I'm looking for recipe data is because, again, I would want some dummy data. While we're still working on this, obviously, as I click on the details, I would want to display something. And I do have all my data in recipe data in the folder that we got in the setup files. So that's the reason why we're actually importing. And I'm going to say from, now I'm going to be looking for our data file, as well as this is going to be temp details. So finally I can use that file. And I would also want a link. So we're going to do import, because if you're looking at our last or final project, you'll notice that as I go to the single recipe, I'm going to have the back to the recipes list. So this is where we're going to use the link. And by the way, this is how our single recipe is going to look like, where again, we'll have some title, and this is going to be the information about each and every recipe. And I'm going to repeat this probably for the 5th time, but for now, it's going to place a dummy data, meaning we're going to place the data that they will going to be sending us back, but without an Ajax request. And let's say import. We're going to be looking for the link. Then from React router DOM, that's going to be our import. And now again, I would like to set up the constructor. I'm going to say constructor. We need to pass the props. Then we also need super, because we would want to get it from the component. And then now let's look at how we can access that. And the easiest way is we can just do our good old console log. And notice what happens if I'm typing this dot, and then let's say props. And let's see what we're going to have. And the moment, first of all, I would like to open, obviously, the page. So I'm going to click on details. Then we're going to do the inspect. And as we're looking at the console, what do you see? Well, I see here in the bottom, I have the object. Now, the object has many different things. It has the history, it has the location match, but obviously what we're looking at is the match. Then within the match, what do I have? Well, I have match, then I have the params, and there I have my ID. If you don't believe me that this is going to be a different ID, I will obviously going to print it on the screen just so you actually do believe me. So let's say this dot props match, and we're going to write ID, as well as why don't we print it out on the screen, and why don't we print it out in like a heading 1, just so it's big and noticeable. ID for this recipe is, and we already know that we can access obviously JavaScript within our JSX. And let's just copy and paste these few lines, and let's see what's going to happen. The ID for this recipe, and at the moment I have nothing. Okay, so it says here that this is going to be undefined. And the reason for that is because I need to look for params. It's not just a match. It's going to be actually params. Params. And let's see what we're going to have for now. Params. Again, one more time. And yes, I do have 35382. Okay. Let's go back to the recipes. Let's look at, I don't know. Okay, so this was the first one. Then what about the second one? 47024. Okay, also unique. And last but not least, 47319. Okay, so I know that this is going to be working. Well, first and foremost, I'm going to set this up as a variable. I'm going to say const ID is going to be equal to this ID. I'm going to say, okay, ID is going to be here, and this is going to be equal to ID. And then, by the way, we don't need this anymore. We're obviously going to be having our normal GSX, meaning something along the lines like this, not just big fat ID. And then in this case, why don't we create a state in the constructor? And on the other one, we're going to do it a little bit differently. In the recipes, I believe, page, we're going to set up our state outside. Now we can do it either way. I'm just showing you, as always, how you can do it multiple ways. The same is going to be with our Ajax request. In a single recipe page, in this page, we are going to do our Ajax request a little bit differently. Now, there's multiple reasons for that. Well, first and foremost, because this guy also has the search. That's the reason why we're going to have to do it a little bit differently, but also to give you an idea that you have multiple options to choose from. So it's not like one option that you always have to do it. And now let's create a state. Let's say this dot state. Within the state, there's going to be a few things. First of all, there's going to be a recipe. That's going to be at the moment this dummy data that we're going to be displaying. So recipe data. That's going to be my value. And here, obviously, I need to have the equal sign. This is what's missing. Also, I'm going to have the ID, and I'm going to set this equal to ID. And since I know that within the S6, I can just set them equal to each other. I can just say, okay, so this is going to be my ID. And last but not least, we're going to have the loading, which is going to be equal to the false. At the moment, again, this is not going to make much sense. This is going to make sense when we're going to be loading this specific recipe, because obviously on our local dev server, this might be quick. But then once your application is going to be actually hosting somewhere, then it might take, let's say, I don't know, a second or whatever when this actual recipe is going to load. So you might as well set up some kind of conditional rendering where you say that there's going to be some kind of text that says, okay, loading or something like that. So your user knows, okay, something is happening. And this is the reason for this variable. Again, at the moment, not going to make sense. Everything we're going to get right away with this dummy data is going to be displayed in a split second. Later on, it will going to make sense as we start working with our Ajax. That's going to be our state. After the state, eventually we're going to have our actual method. Now the method is going to be one of the lifecycle methods, which we haven't talked about. But for now, we're just going to leave that empty. And we're going to say that there's going to be nothing there. And now what about the render? Well, first and foremost, in the render, again, I would like to destructure everything from the recipe. So the recipe that I have in a state. I will not going to print it on the screen. Again, this is just in our dummy data. And this is just the variables that we're looking for. And we're going to say image URL. Image URL. This is one of them. Then we also have publisher. Publisher URL. That's going to be another one. Source URL. Source URL. And then we also have title. And we have ingredients, which is going to be array, by the way. Just letting you know. And in this case, I'm destructuring from this dot state, then recipe. That's where we're going to be getting our data. And why don't we right away start writing our return? But in this case, the return is going to be not a single return, but there's going to be two of them. So what I'm going to say first, if the loading is going to be true, which by the way, eventually we're going to set it right away to true. So this is always going to be true unless we get the specific recipe back into our state. And you'll see how this is going to work. So just bear with me. I'm going to say if the loading, so this dot state loading is going to be true, which obviously in our case, this is false. So you're not going to be able to see it. But when we're going to make the Ajax request, hopefully it will going to take a little bit longer. So you're going to be able to see how this is going to work. So if the loading is true, then I would want to have one return. And then if this is going to be false, then I'm just going to return something else, which is going to be our main application, which is going to be this, by the way. So the moment we're going to do our Ajax request, we're going to set the loading to actually false, because eventually this is going to be true. And then we're going to render everything like it should be. However, before that, since the loading is going to be true, then we're just going to be displaying some kind of loading recipe. And for that, we have an option of, again, working with a div, let's say, and within the container. Now, so this gives me a hard time. So why don't we do it like this? Why don't we say, okay, so this is going to be div, then the class is going to be container, and then within the container, there's just going to be a row, not row, but a row, And then within the row, we're gonna have, I don't know, some column, 10 columns wide div, MX auto, always in the center, and then column medium 6, and let's say margin top bottom will be 3. That's gonna be our div. And you know what, by the way, just for the kicks of it, why don't we set it equal to true, just so we can see what we're doing. And at the moment, obviously nothing is shown because we don't have any kind of text. So let's add the column here. This is going to be our div. And then let's have, like, let's say heading 2, class name, text, uppercase, text orange. So I'd want my text to be orange. Orange. And then we're going to have also text center. And let's write, I don't know, loading recipe and dot, 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 dot. And yeah, now I have my loading recipe. So this is something that's going to be displayed. And obviously, since this is going to be true, then we're only going to be returning this JSX. And eventually with Ajax, and I know I'm repeating this, but then we're going to set it equal to false. So for now, let's just have it as a false. Otherwise, nothing is going to be shown what we're going to be doing. And I think it's going to be quite annoying. So right after the if, we can just say, okay, if it is actually false, then I would like to return this. So I'm going to say return, and then we're going to be again looking for our JSX. Well, first is going to be our container div. There are going to be some class names. The class name is going to be container. Also, there's going to be some margin bottom 5. That's going to be our container. Then within the container, there will be a row. And you know what? Why don't we start here with a column? So we're going to say that there will going to be some kind of column. The column is going to be spanning, again, 10 columns wide with MX auto. So this will be always in the center. And once it gets to the medium screen, this is going to be 6 columns wide. And last but not least, again, we're going to have some margin top bottom A3. Okay. Within this div, what we're going to have? Well, first, let's start with this link. Because like I was showing you, since this is going to be how our single application is going to look like, we're going to have our link. And then we're also going to have the actual info. And the way we're setting up is this is going to be a 2-column layout. So might as well right away copy and paste it. And we just need to understand that this is where we're going to be placing the link and the image. And on the right-hand side, this is where, again, we'll have title, publisher, buttons, and blah, 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 blah. Okay, so why don't we start with the link? Now, the link is going to lead back to recipes. So we know already we need to use the to attribute, then / recipes. Recipes, this is going to be the actual to attribute. This is going to be my path. And then we're going to have some class names just for styling. BTN, so that would be button. Warning, so yellow. Margin bottom will be 5. And text, let's do uppercase or capitalize. Doesn't really matter. Back to recipes list, or recipes list. I think that should do it. Yeah, that's going to look exactly like that. Like so. And then we also would want to display the image for each and every recipe. And the image is going to be image, again, URL. And then we also would want some class names. That's not what we wanted. So class name. And in the class names, I don't know, we might have it displayed as a block. I'm going to say the width is going to be 100%. And let's add a little bit of styling for the image that we're going to be getting back. Style, and then we're going to be looking for max height. So max height, this should be our suggestion. And then for max height, I don't know, 30 REMs. 30 REMs. And you know what? For the alternative, let's just write recipe. And let's see what we're going to have. Yeah, that is going to be our recipe. This is our first column. And now we're going to make sure that we're not going to place the information within this column, within the first column, but this is why we're going to add some comment, let's say info, and we were going to work on our info column. I'm going to write, okay, so info column, div, of course, and what would be within the div? Well, there's going to be a little bit more information here. Let's start maybe with a heading 6. For the heading 6, we're going to have, again, class name. Class name is going to be text uppercase. So text is going to be uppercase, and we're going to place a title. All right, we have the title. What else? Well, we're going to create another heading 6, and let me scroll up. Heading 6. For this one, we're going to have a text warning. So text is going to be white, or not white. This is going to be yellow. Text capitalize, as well as text slanted. And let's write provided by, this is going to be our publisher, of course. So publisher, and let's save. All right, so we have the closet cooking. And then we also would want 2 links. One is going to be to the publisher page, and the second one is going to be recipe URL. So the final look is going to be like so, where we have these 2 buttons. So let's say, okay, we're going to be looking first of all for 1 button. Now this button is going to be a href, of course. Then for this one, we're going to do publisher URL. So this is going to go to the publisher. We also would want to target a target of being blank. So underscore blank. And remember, we needed that relationship and not ref, the relationship of being no opener, as well as no referrer. I think this should do. And why don't we also add some class names? And for some reason, this is not giving me class name. Okay, let's see. And we're gonna do, I don't know, BTN primary margin top. Let's have, I don't know, 2 text capitalize. Let's save it. Of course, this is going to be our small button, but I do want to have the also closing tag because I'm going to write something. So I'm going to say publisher web page. Publisher web page. Let's see. All right. So we have our button. Excellent. Now let's copy and paste it. And in this case, we will going to keep a lot of things exactly the same, but I will going to change the color. For the second one, I'm going to say success. All right. Then we would want to probably have a different URL, since in our case, we're going to be getting this from the source URL. And again, these are just information that they're sending back. And this is available in our recipe. That's all that's happening. And also I have a target blank, but I would like to change the name. And you know what? For the name, I'm going to say recipe URL. Let's do this one. Let's see what we're going to have. Okay, that would be recipe URL. And you know what? Why don't we also add some margin left and right of, let's say, 2. Okay. Then last, we're going to have the unordered list. And within the unordered list, we're going to have our ingredients. So right after the last link, let's have the unordered list group. What would be the class name? List group. Yeah, list group. And we also would want maybe add some margin top 4. So a little bit margin on the top. All right. And then let's have, I don't know, heading 2 with some kind of also class names with a little bit of margins. Margin top 3, margin bottom 4. And then within the heading 2, we're going to write ingredients. So ingredients. Hopefully I'm going to spell this correctly. Dense. Yeah. That should do. As well as now, since the ingredients is going to be array, and maybe for this guy, I will going to show you what's happening with our temp details, where the information is coming from. I have my URL, I have the image, I have the ingredients, publisher URL, source URL title. And that's the information that I'm looking for. And ingredients is just going to be an array of strings. So that's how we were going to access it. I'm going to say single recipe. Then we would want to loop through an array, since I know that I have the array there. And that's going to be ingredients. Obviously, that is the variable that we did the structure. That was the last one that we destructure. Ingredients. And now we're going to use the map method. And in this case, we're going to cheat a little bit. We're going to say item. And since we're rendering the list, we do need to have the ID. But since I'm not going to be changing anything about this list, I think we can just use the index and we're going to be fine. And what we're going to be rendering, well, each and every time we're going to be returning a list item. So we're going to write a return, and we would like to render list item. Then the list item is going to have the key. Key is going to be the index. Like I said, we're going to be cheating a little bit. And let's maybe add a few class names here, just again for the CSS. List, group, we have item. That would be the class, as well as text slanted class. And that should be the other class. And let's just write whatever we have within the item. Since this is just an array of strings, each and every item is going to be represented by the strings. And the moment we're going to render it, I will going to have some kind of error. Okay, and the reason for that is I think that I messed it up with the name. And no, this is still not showing. Okay, and probably the destructuring was the issue. So it should be ingredients along the lines like this. Let's save that. And yeah, now everything is showing fine. Where we do have each and every ingredient that is being shown here. And awesome. We have our single page. Let's see on a bigger browser window. The moment I'm going to click on it, again, we're going to use the dummy data for all of them right now. And for all of them, this is going to be exactly the same. But the moment we're going to hook it up with an Ajax, which by the way, we're going to do in the next video, then for these three at least, because we have at least in a list so far 3 recipes. For all 3 of them, we're going to be getting specific information. So for this one, we're going to have our sandwich. And then for our hot potatoes, it's going to be hot potatoes, not a sandwich.